The storm rattled the cabin windows as if it wanted in, and for a moment, I couldn't decide who was more dangerous, the weather outside or Karen Holt standing in my living room. She didn't just enter a room. She seized it. Her blonde bob was plastered to her head with rain, mascara trailing faint lines down her cheeks like war paint. Even soaked through, she carried herself with the rigid confidence of someone who believed every space within a 10-mile radius was under her jurisdiction. "Karen," I said flatly, my voice drowned a little by the wind. "This isn't a good time." She planted her hands on her hips, dripping onto the hardwood floor I had sanded by hand last summer. "It's never a good time with you, Evan," she snapped, using my first name as though we were in some eternal argument, and maybe we were. "You think you can avoid the HOA? You think you can sneak off out here, hide your little violations, and no one's going to notice?" Daniel Mercer, the state investigator, closed the folder under his arm and studied her the way a surgeon studies a tumor before deciding where to cut. He hadn't said a word yet, but his presence filled the room like a second storm. His eyes flicked from Karen to me and back, sharp and calculating. "And you are?" Karen demanded, as though Mercer's government-issued raincoat and badge didn't already answer the question. Mercer didn't flinch. He spoke calmly, voice low but commanding. "Daniel Mercer, State Department of Natural Resources. I'm here on official business with Mr. Walker." That silenced her for half a second. Then, predictably, she doubled down. "Official business? With him? You should know this man has been violating every HOA code we've established since he bought this cabin. Unauthorized dock extension. Bonfires after dark. He's even been spotted," she dropped her voice dramatically, using a gas generator. I almost laughed, not because it was funny but because it was absurd. Here was a state investigator, here to discuss something serious enough that he'd driven through a storm to reach me, and Karen was worried about bonfires. "Mrs. Holt," Mercer said evenly, "why don't you sit down?" That suggestion hit her like a slap. Sit down? Do you know who I am? I run the lakeshore community. This lake, these cabins, the property values, all of it falls under my responsibility. I don't need to sit. I need answers." Her eyes darted toward the folder in Mercer's hand. And suddenly, I understood. She hadn't just stormed in here because of me. She wasn't furious just about dock extensions or bonfires. She knew, or at least suspected, that Mercer's investigation had something to do with her precious HOA, and she wasn't about to let the truth surface without a fight. Mercer must have seen it too. He placed the folder carefully on the table, like bait. "Then let's make something clear. I didn't come here for gossip, Mrs. Holt. I came here because there are allegations involving misuse of community funds, unlawful restrictions on property rights, and possibly environmental violations connected to the HOA." Karen's face went pale, though she tried to hide it beneath a mask of indignation. "That's ridiculous. Lies. Probably spread by him." She jabbed a finger at me like I was the source of all corruption on the lake. I finally spoke, leaning forward from my chair, voice steady but edged with years of pent-up frustration. "Karen, you've been terrorizing this neighborhood for years. Fines for uncut grass, threats for parking a truck in a driveway, letters about the color of someone's curtains. But this," I gestured to Mercer's folder. "This sounds like something bigger." Her lips trembled, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her armor. "You don't know what you're talking about." Mercer slid a manila envelope out of the folder. His movements were slow, deliberate, every detail designed to unnerve. "Mrs. Holt, the state has records. Bank transfers. Complaints filed and buried. And that's before we even get into the environmental impact reports. Do you want me to read them aloud?" The storm banged against the walls, thunder rolling like a drumbeat beneath his words. Karen's eyes darted toward the door, but she didn't move. She looked trapped, like a cornered animal. And that's when something inside me shifted, a realization that whatever Mercer had uncovered, Karen knew exactly what it was. She wasn't just scared of losing power. She was scared of exposure. Mercer's gaze didn't leave her. "Now, you barged in here uninvited. That means you're part of this conversation whether you like it or not. So tell me, how much of the HOA's money went missing under your watch? Karen's chest rose and fell, fast and uneven. She glanced at me, then back at Mercer, then to the storming lake beyond the window, as if the waves themselves might offer her a way out. Finally, she snapped. You don't understand. You don't know what's at stake. Her voice cracked, the first hint of desperation breaking through her fury. This isn't just about money, or property lines, or some stupid dock extension. If you dig too deep, you'll put us all in danger. Her words hung in the air like a lightning strike, electric and final. Mercer leaned back, narrowing his eyes. Danger from who? But Karen didn't answer. She just stood there, trembling, rainwater dripping into a growing puddle on the floor, her bravado gone. I realized then that the storm outside was nothing compared to the storm that had just entered my cabin. And it was only the beginning. The storm outside had settled into a rhythm, heavy sheets of rain pounding against the roof, the wind howling through the trees, the lake hammering its waves against the rocks. Inside the cabin, the three of us stood suspended in a silence far heavier than the storm. Karen Holt's words still hung between us. If you dig too deep, you'll put us all in danger. Daniel Mercer's expression didn't shift, but his eyes narrowed, the way a wolf locks onto movement in the dark. He opened his folder again, sliding out a stack of papers, each one protected in a clear sleeve. His voice was calm, measured. Mrs. Holt, you're going to explain that statement. What kind of danger are we talking about? Financial? Criminal? Environmental? Karen shook her head, wet hair clinging to her cheek. You think this is about money? It's bigger than that. Much bigger. I crossed my arms, frustration tightening my chest. Karen, you've been bullying neighbors for years over trash bins and porch lights. You don't get to suddenly play cryptic prophet. If you know something, say it. Because right now, it looks like you've been caught skimming funds. Her eyes snapped to mine, sharp as broken glass. You think I wanted this? You think I enjoy being the villain? Someone had to keep this community in line. Someone had to keep people quiet. Quiet about what? Mercer pressed. Karen hesitated. Her lips moved like she wanted to form the words, but fear strangled them back. Instead, she dropped her gaze to the puddle forming beneath her shoes, her hands trembling at her sides. The investigator tapped the stack of documents with one finger. We have records of unapproved expenditures from the HOA account. Thousands redirected into shell companies. Environmental waivers for chemical disposal on the North Shore. These don't look like community improvements, Mrs. Holt. They look like cover-ups. That got my attention. Chemical disposal? I repeated, my stomach tightening. On the lake? Mercer glanced at me. There's evidence suggesting waste was dumped along the northern coves. The paperwork was signed under the HOA's authority. His gaze returned to Karen. Your signature appears more than once. Karen's face drained of color. You don't understand. We didn't have a choice. Her words struck me like a hammer. We. Not I. Mercer noticed too. Who's we, Mrs. Holt? She pressed her lips together, as if sealing the secret there. Lightning flashed through the window, illuminating her pale, stricken face. For the first time since I'd known Karen Holt, I saw something raw beneath the arrogance, fear. Real, bone-deep fear. Mercer leaned closer, lowering his voice. Listen carefully. Whatever you're protecting, it's already unraveling. You can cooperate now, or you can wait until the subpoenas and indictments roll in. Either way, the truth comes out. Karen's breathing grew shallow, ragged. She turned her eyes toward the lake, as though something out there held her in its grip. You don't get it, she whispered. They'll come for me. For all of us. If I say too much. Her voice cracked, and she stopped, clutching her arms as if the storm outside might burst through and drag her away. Mercer didn't move. His patience was unnerving, like a man who knew time itself was on his side. But I wasn't so patient. "Karen, enough games," I snapped, the anger I'd buried for years spilling out. "You fined people for mailbox paint, you've ruined families over fences, and now you're telling me you've been covering up toxic waste on this lake? If you know who's behind this, say it." She looked at me, then really looked. And in her eyes, I saw something I didn't expect. Not contempt, not superiority. Pity. "You shouldn't have bought this cabin, Evan," she whispered. "You never should have gotten involved." Her words chilled me deeper than the storm ever could. Mercer finally spoke again, his tone like steel. "Who are you protecting, Mrs. Holt?" Karen's lips parted, but before she could answer, a sound broke through the storm, sharp, metallic, unnatural. All three of us froze. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't thunder. It was the screech of tires on gravel, right outside the cabin. Mercer was the first to move. He strode to the window, pulling the curtain back just enough to peer through. His jaw tightened. Black SUV. No plates. My pulse spiked. Out here? In this weather? Karen's face went white. She stumbled back a step, clutching the edge of the table for support. "No," she breathed. "They came." Mercer turned to her, eyes hard. "Who came, Mrs. Holt?" She shook her head violently, panic overtaking her. I told you if you dug too deep." The headlights outside cut through the rain, sweeping across the cabin walls. The engine idled, low and threatening, before the sound of doors slamming echoed through the storm. Mercer moved fast, snapping his folder shut and slipping it into his coat. His voice was calm but urgent. "Evan, lock the back door. Now." "Mrs. Holt, sit down and stay quiet." But Karen was already unraveling, her breath coming in frantic gasps. "You don't understand, they'll kill us, they'll." "Sit down." Mercer barked, his voice thunderous enough to silence even her. I moved quickly, bolting the rear door, the hairs on my neck rising with every step. Shadows flickered across the windows as figures moved outside. The storm wasn't the only thing battering at my cabin anymore. Something far darker had arrived at the lake. And suddenly, Karen Holt's warning didn't seem so dramatic after all. The pounding at the door was not polite. It rattled the hinges like the intruders meant to tear the cabin off its foundation. Rain whipped through the cracks, driven by the storm, as Mercer motioned for me to kill the lamp. The room plunged into shadow, lit only by the lightning flashing across the lake. Karen clutched the table, her whole body shaking. Her earlier arrogance was gone, now she looked like a woman moments from breaking. Mercer's voice was low, steady. "Evan, stay behind me. Mrs. Holt, you'll sit tight and keep your mouth shut." The banging stopped. A voice came from outside, muffled but commanding. "Karen Holt. We know you're in there. Open the door." My stomach turned. Whoever they weren't neighbors. Karen's breath hitched. "They know. Oh God, they know." Mercer leaned close to her, his tone razor sharp. "Who are they, Karen? Who have you been covering for?" She shook her head, tears streaking her rain-smeared face. "I can't. If I talk, we're dead. All of us." The voice outside grew louder, more insistent. "Open it, or we come in." Mercer's hand moved to the holster beneath his coat. I hadn't even realized he was armed until then. His eyes flicked toward me, cold and pragmatic. "Evan, get to the back of the room. If they breach, you stay low." The next strike against the door was harder, splintering the frame. Thunder rolled in time with the violence, shaking the cabin like it was caught between two storms. And then, without warning, Karen screamed. Not a scream of defiance, a scream of surrender. "Stop. I'll open it." She bolted for the door. Mercer lunged, grabbing her wrist, but she twisted like a wild thing, her voice breaking. "If I don't, they'll kill us all." The door flew open, slamming against the wall. Cold rain and lightning spilled into the cabin, framing the figures on the porch. 3 men in dark coats, faces shadowed, each carrying the kind of weight in their posture that spoke of violence done before. The leader stepped inside, eyes locking on Karen. He didn't glance at Mercer or me. "You were told to keep quiet." Karen shrank back, but her voice cracked out, raw with terror. "I tried." She pointed at Mercer, came with files. "He knows everything." The man's gaze shifted at last, settling on Mercer. His lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "State boy. Thought you could poke your nose in?" Mercer didn't flinch. His gun was out now, steady in his grip, trained on the leader's chest. "You've got 5 seconds to explain what's happening here." The intruder laughed softly. 5 seconds won't save you." Lightning split the sky and the cabin erupted. One of the men lunged, reaching beneath his coat. Mercer fired once, the deafening crack shaking the walls. The man dropped, clutching his shoulder, screaming. The leader drew a weapon of his own, but Mercer was faster, kicking the table into him, sending papers and lamp crashing to the floor. Chaos swallowed the cabin. I ducked behind the couch, heart slamming against my ribs, the taste of copper in my mouth. Karen screamed again, her voice drowned in thunder and gunfire. Another shot tore through the room, shattering glass. Rain poured in with the wind, the storm and violence indistinguishable now. I crawled toward Karen, grabbing her arm. "Who are they, Karen? Tell me now." Her eyes were wild, terrified, but something in her broke. The truth came out in a choked rush. "Developers. They paid the HOA to sign off on dumping. Chemical contracts, illegal waste. I didn't want to." Her confession cut off as the leader shoved the table aside, weapon raised, his eyes burning into her. "You should have kept your mouth shut." Before he could fire, Mercer rose from behind the overturned chair, gun leveled. His shot cracked through the cabin, and the leader crumpled, his weapon clattering to the floor. The last intruder dropped his gun, hands in the air, backing into the storm. He vanished into the rain, swallowed by the night. For a moment, all that remained was the sound of the storm and the smell of gunpowder. Mercer lowered his weapon slowly, his breathing steady but hard. He turned to Karen, his face carved from stone. "So it's true. You sold the lake to cover for them." Karen collapsed into the chair, sobbing. "I thought I was protecting us. If we didn't cooperate, they would have found someone else and they would have made examples out of us. I was just trying to keep people safe." I stared at her, disbelief warring with fury. "Safe? You poisoned the lake, ruined lives, bullied us into silence, and for what? To keep thugs like them happy?" Her sobs filled the room, small and broken. For the first time, Karen Holt didn't look like the iron-fisted tyrant of Lakeshore. She looked like a woman who had shackled herself to the very people she feared. Mercer gathered the fallen folder, its pages scattered and wet, and tucked it beneath his arm. His voice was final, unyielding. "Mrs. Holt, you'll be answering for this. In court." The storm outside began to ease, the thunder rolling farther into the distance. The cabin, wrecked and splintered, seemed to sigh under the release of pressure. I stood there, drenched in rain and sweat, staring at Karen as the weight of years settled over me. For so long, she had been the monster in our neighborhood, the enforcer of petty rules, the tyrant of mailboxes and lawns. But tonight had revealed the real monster, and it wasn't just her. It was the rot that had seeped beneath the surface of our lake, poisoning everything in silence. And now, at last, it would be dragged into the light. Mercer holstered his weapon, his gaze meeting mine. "Evan, this doesn't end here. There'll be hearings, investigations, cleanup orders." But tonight, he glanced at Karen, broken and trembling, tonight was the turning point. I nodded slowly, my chest tight with a strange mix of relief and sorrow. The storm outside dwindled to a drizzle, the lake settling into uneasy calm. For the first time in years, I felt like the cabin might finally belong to me again.